Welcome. Thanks for joining me today. Many of us are familiar with the false prophet of the book of Revelation, but what many of us do not know is that he previously existed. We're going to look at some Bible verses that support that, and specifically, we are going to look at verses about him in Revelation 13. My name is Vince. This is episode 23 of End Time Bible Fulfillments in Sequential Order. It is key for us to understand that the false prophet's role is during the second half of the tribulation period. And though he might be on the scene during the first half of the tribulation, his role takes precedent during the final 3.5 years. So this is the key moment in time he must act. Now, to understand this better, we understand the flood has happened. The dragon and Antichrist sent out an army after Israel. That failed, so they are focusing now in on killing other believers. Now, we are given a warning about this in Matthew 24, verses 7 and 8, which say, "For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." Now, understand, these events are a summary of what happens during the first 4 trumpet blasts of Revelation chapter 8. Ultimately, they are the kicking off point for a time that is going to transition in the first part of Matthew 24, verse 9, which says, "Then they will deliver you to tribulation and will kill you." So the focus now becomes on eliminating those that God considers his saints, which would be inclusive of Jewish believers and Gentile believers, and also the nation of Israel, because the nation of Israel will soon go through a national repentance. We have a lot of information in this next verse that we're looking at. Revelation 13:11, which reads, "And I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon." Understand, this is talking about the false prophet. Yes, he is called the false prophet in Revelation 16:13 and in Revelation 19:20. So this has given us a picture of the individual, of what he is like. Now you will notice that it starts off with the words, "I saw another beast coming up out of the earth." This becomes vitally important because it says he was coming up out of the earth. Unlike the first beast of Revelation 13 that comes up out of the sea, it says earth here. That is showing a distinction between the false prophet and the beast. It's talking about origins. When something is tied to being initiated from the spirit realm, it uses the word sea. Sea of humanity is influenced by the spirit realm. Furthermore, when it uses up coming up out of the earth, we get a Bible reference from 1 Samuel, where the words coming up out of the earth are used in chapter 28, verses 13 and 14. Now, in this particular case, you have the witch of Endor, who comes and calls Samuel out of the earth because she's being asked to do so by the king of Israel at that time, King Saul. And Samuel does come up out of the earth only to tell Saul he is going to die the next day in battle. Now, this becomes instrumental in understanding the term coming up out of the earth, because Samuel, before Christ died for the sins, was in the center of the earth. He was in the underworld. Of course, he was in a section that was going to be redeemed, known as paradise, and more than likely in a section of paradise known as Abraham's bosom, to be later brought up into the heavenly realm after the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So it's important for us to understand the distinction. Where Antichrist has his origins as a spirit being, this particular individual once existed, was in the center of the earth, and had his previous origins as a human being. Now, we're going to look at another verse later on that's going to support why this is more than likely the case. You will furthermore notice that he has two horns like a lamb. This also is very important because it is making a distinction. Whenever you have horns, you're talking about rulers. So, in other words, there are two rules that he will have control of. More than likely, they are religious in nature. However, I would not exempt the possibility that they could have something to do with a governmental entity, but more than likely, they are religious in nature. Whoops, spent 100 hours on my eyes, now my mouth don't work. They're religious in nature from the standpoint that the word lamb here is represented. And the idea with this word lamb is to tie us to a simile, even though it is a fake one, to his relation to being something like a Christ person. In other words, he's there to be able to act on sacrificing and bringing peace to the world. Jesus Christ brought peace with God to the world by his sacrifice. This person is going to say, we are doing this because we want to bring peace. We want to bring to better good. You don't want to go to another first half of the tribulation period ever again like you just have and experience all these bad things. I'm here to solve the problem. But truthfully, he is speaking as a dragon. So when he speaks as a dragon, the word dragon has an association with the word entrap. He is trying to trap them, he is trying to deceive them so they will go on to ultimate eternal damnation. Let's talk about a couple of things that give the false prophet credibility. We find this in Revelation 13:12. It starts off by saying, and he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, whose fatal wound was healed. Now understand, something is being validated here. By him exercising his authority in the presence of the beast, it shows that that authority was given to him. So therefore, he has the credibility of the Antichrist who stands in his presence and stand behind what he does. Now, it does mention whose fatal wound was healed here. We're going to talk about this, how it was not so much a fake wound. It was a real wound that kind of happened. I call it a fake wound at times. But the reality of it is the healing was incomplete. And that's what makes it a phony. Now you will notice, because he has the authority, that authority is also shown by signs, which is what it says in Revelation 13:13. He performs great signs, so he does do signs. Even, it says over here, a specific sign, so that he even makes fire come out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. Therefore, from the atmosphere, fire will come down, just as it did in Job 1, where it burned up his servants and his sheep. In that particular chapter of the Bible, this authority will be granted by the dragon and the Antichrist, so he deceives men. We're going to talk about the Antichrist being alive, but we're also going to show you here where the possibility exists that by the power of the false prophet, this particular person may be raised. Now, it doesn't say that in the text, but remember, he performs great signs. So when we understand the Antichrist becomes alive, we understand there is a temporary death. It is told to us in Revelation 13:3, where it says, I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed, and the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. Now we know this beast to be the Antichrist, the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. So we have to look at something that tells us that he is not so bad. In other words, the miracle that happens is an incomplete healing. In Zechariah chapter 11, verses 15 through 17, let's kind of dissect it a little bit here and get an idea of what's going on. Then the Lord said to me, he's saying to Zechariah, take again for yourself equipment of a foolish shepherd. Now he's taking instruments that shepherds wouldn't use to create a type of himself being like a foolish shepherd. He's probably got some sheep there that he's playing with. Now in verse 16 it says, for behold, Hineni, behold, I am going to raise up a shepherd in the land who will not care for the perishing, seek the scattered, heal the broken, or sustain the one standing, but will devour the flesh of the fat sheep and tear off their hoof. So why is he taking on this role of the foolish shepherd? Because he's going to show that God one day will raise up a leader that just don't care about his people. He is going to go ahead and destroy his people rather than helping them. Now, verse 17 says, woe to the foolish shepherd who leaves the flock. Okay, a woe means an anathema, it's a condemnation on this particular shepherd who's supposed to be leading Israel. A sword will be on his arm and on his right eye. Now, understand, we are told specifically here where the Antichrist will be wounded by a weapon. It is going to be on his arm and in his right eye. Consider this fatal on the right eye. And it says here, his arm will be totally withered and his right eye will be blind. So, what this tells us from the point of the miracle and the return or resurrection of the beast, the miracle only can go so far. It brings him back, but he will not be able to see from the one eye, the right eye, that was originally wounded, and he will not regain total use of one of his arms. Now, it talks about an image to be worshiped in Revelation 13:14, because this is what the false prophet is going to play on. Remember, this is a fake resurrection. It is copying Jesus Christ. And it says that the false prophet deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which was given him to perform in the presence of the beast. So, in other words, he's deceiving others by the signs he's given when the Antichrist is present. And those who dwell on earth, he gets them to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. An incomplete resurrection. Different than Lazarus when he came out of the tomb, who had regained full restoration of everything he had before he went to sleep or died. This particular miracle shows that it is incomplete and it is not of God. Thank you for giving us a thumbs up on this study. It really does help the channel. Also consider subscribing. Now, regarding the image and the mark of the beast, I need to cover a couple of verses first in Revelation 13. And those are verse 7 and verse 10. It says it was given to the Antichrist to make war with the saints and to overcome him. And authority over every tribe, people, tongue, and nation was given to Antichrist. to him. So what does this mean? It means that God is allowing us to be defeated. And in order for that to happen and for Antichrist to make war with us, he is given authority to him over all the other people. He needs people to do his dirty work. But understand, this is what makes the distinction between those who belong to God and those who are not his church, those who are not his saints. Now, in verse 10, it says, if anyone is destined for the captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone kills with the sword he must be killed. Here is the perseverance and the faith of the saints. So, what we are destined for is two things here. We cannot resist, and there is a chance we will go into captivity. He also makes it clear if we do resist and fight back with the sword, we will die. But in either case, it is showing that we are persevering. We are resisting the will of the Antichrist, and it is showing that we have faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. Now, let me come upon the image. Why did he have people make this image? And it says in Revelation 13:15, there was giving to him to give breath to the image of the beast, and that image of the beast might even speak and cause as many as do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Now, what we have here is we have, I'm not sure if it's an AI robotic that comes to life, but it is telling us that this image comes alive here. It seems that the image is able to move. It seems that the image is able to talk, and it is alive. Again, I don't know if it's alive in some form of flesh. Secondly, it says the image of the beast might even speak. It talks to us. And it says if we don't worship this image, we will be killed. Now, it is possible that the image itself may be able to kill us, or it is just simply saying that when we don't worship the beast, that the false prophet will have us killed. In either case, we'll find out when that happens. Now, what is key to this particular image? It is to force many of Israel to recognize who the Antichrist is, because the image is going to be set up in his temple. Now, most people will not be in that area or be there. In Revelation, how does he control the people that aren't in Israel? In Revelation 13 and 16 through 18, it says, he, the false prophet, causes all, the small and the great and the rich and the poor and the free man and the slave to be given a mark on the right hand or on the forehead. Now understand, everybody has to get this mark. You know, it says that if you do not get the mark, there are consequences in verse 17. And he provides that no one should be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. So there is something about this particular mark. We're going to get into this a little bit later. But in this war, he's making it so all the saints are going to go hungry, and all the saints are not going to be able to pay rent, not be able to get medical help. How devastating. How much faith do you need to persevere through this? Quite a bit. So you have to trust the Lord. Then it says something here for us. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for that number is that of man, and that number is 666. Therefore, the number has to do with some sort of calculation being necessary. Again, we will cover this particular verse a little bit more in the next video. But before we do that, let me finish up what we have here. Now, he did say there were two reasons for the false prophet's earlier existence. The first one was that he comes out of the earth. The second one is given in Revelation 19:20, which says, "The beast was seized, with him the false prophet who performed the signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image." These two were thrown alive into the lake of fire, which burns with brimstone. Now, let me explain this briefly because we don't have a lot of time in this video left. The Antichrist and the false prophet are both going to force everyone to get this mark. There's no doubt about that. They are going to force the worship of this image, especially the false prophet here, and they are thrown alive into the lake of fire. Now, if we understand, everybody else who has died before them was cast into Sheol, or into hell. Or after the death of Jesus Christ, if they were believers, they entered into the Lord's presence in paradise in heaven. However, at this particular time, these two individuals do not go to hell, but they go to the lake of fire. They go to Gehenna. They go to a place that was being built for specifically the angels. I believe that's in Matthew 25. Now, why are they separated of all the other people? The simple reason is they had both been alive as humans twice. At the white throne judgment, all the unbelievers are going to be resurrected, and they too are going to go in the lake of fire. Therefore, they are resurrected to go alive into the lake of fire, just as the false prophet and the Antichrist. So this shows again that both the false prophet and the Antichrist had existence on earth at an earlier time. I cannot say with 100% certainty who the false prophet was in a prior life. More than likely, I lean toward the possibility of him being Nimrod. Now, that is a study for a different day, but our next study coming up, the war will continue in episode 24, Babylon Falls. We will look at that reference in Revelation 14, and we will cover more about the mark of the beast. Thank you for joining me, and may God bless you. My name is Vince, and I will be seeing you soon.